This is the Soul to Earth podcast. I'm your host, Carrie Koss, psychic, evidential medium, mentor, and witch, here to help you explore your connection with the spirit world and discover your own grounded spiritual practice. Welcome to the podcast. I have another incredible episode for you. Today, we're going to be talking about the Akashic Records, what they are, how to work in them, and also to be able to clarify different questions that often come up for me because I teach students and clients how to work in the Akashic Records. So we're going to really illuminate what they're for, why you would want to work in them, how to easily start approaching a practice where you incorporate them into your work for self-healing, getting more information about yourself, your soul's journey, and so on. So let's get into the episode. Let's start with my own experience with the Akashic Records. When I was going to school back in my 20s, which I've referenced often, one of the classes that my teacher taught us was how to work in the Akashic Records. Now, at that time, I'm just being honest, it was kind of confusing for me. I didn't really see the point in why you'd want to work in them. It, for me, was a little bit confusing. It was a little mysterious. And so, although we went into the Akashic Records and we learned how to access them, I didn't get very far when it came to this, using it in my practice. So I just sort of left it to the wayside. And it didn't really occur to me until many years later why someone would want to even access them in the first place. And then something happened. In 2019 and 2020, just around the time of COVID, I heard my guides specifically say, go back into the Akashic Records. You need to access them. And so at that time, I'm trying to remember the sequence of events. I feel as though someone, it might have even been Hay House or one of the other larger platforms that sells courses in bundles. And one of the choices I could pick was the Akashic Records. And so I took the class again. Now, admittedly for me, because I work with spirit already, and I have an idea, I understand the energetics of consciousness. I understand the energetics of possibly working in these, what I like to say are liminal spaces. I was able to very easily connect and access them, and also really even get a deeper perspective of why someone would want to work there. So what we're going to talk about today, as we do in all the other episodes, we're going to break down what they are, some of the myths about the Akashic Records. We're going to understand how to approach the records and to be successful in being able to tap into them if you decide to do this. Also, we'll understand some of the challenges, the difficulties that people face when they come into work in the records. And then we will, at the end, I'll be sharing with you the fact that I have a course on how to work in the Akashic Records, which is coming out later in 2024 for you to be able to take and start working in your Akashic Records. So let's start back with me in 2020. In 2020, I'd gotten the messages from my guides that I needed to go back into the records. The mini course I had didn't really scratch my itch. If you know me at all, you will know that if I dive into something, especially if it's related to the esoteric, spiritual, metaphysical, or the occult, I go in very deep and I want to understand it on a thorough level because I really believe in that thing almost like no stone unturned. I have a passion for it. I have a remembrance of it. I have a connection to it. I just don't know what it is, but I know it's there. So I actually went and bought a course that admittedly was Ashley Wood's course, which you can probably look up and find on tapping into the Akashic Records. And so it was a digital course. There was no interaction with anyone else but just my own, which is for me at that time was perfect. So I went in, I took the course, and I did the first exercise, which was to connect in the records. And I had this incredible experience. That first time for me, now, mind you, I've been doing spiritual work, for quite some time. So it's It's comfortable for me. It's something I'm very familiar with. And it also is something that absolutely makes sense in the pieces of the puzzle of my life. And so as I went in, I was able to connect with guides who really were able to validate, clarify, bring me evidence and information about myself, about my spiritual path. And really, they fanned back over a 25-year period and they started helping me make sense of events in my life from a very deep perspective. And also, where I really thought, wow, there is all this information out there about me, about my soul's history, about details of, things about me that are so completely specific and also extremely helpful. And I just thought this has to be a good thing. This makes sense. It's not just something that is a one-time thing that I'm going to be exploring. So what happened is from there, I started going back into my records. That's the way people reference it, is going into your records, and that you will explain why in a minute. And I started doing a lot of what I call healing work. And I also started talking to different spirit guides, different ascended masters. I started connecting with archangels, my own guides, and so on. And so I built this whole repertoire of experiences in the Akashic Records, and it made so much sense to me. Now, mind you, and I think I've shared with you that I have a background in energy healing. I have a background in looking at patterns, and I have a background in understanding how energy works in someone's system and how things can be flourishing or how things can be cut off and blocked and things of that nature. So for me, going into the Akashic Records really made sense. And it made sense because the Akashic Records themselves are this. This is how I would describe them. The Akashic Records are the vibrational memory and history of your soul's entire existence. So it's like a database. It's like Google. For every single life you've lived, for every single experience you've had, for all the times in between lives, and also in general, it's a space that exists beyond time because it doesn't exist in our physical space. It exists all around us, but it's like a consciousness. So it's like aligning with your higher self and your soul. Now imagine if you can go into a place, some people refer to it as a library, which I would agree to it in some ways, and I'll explain why in a minute. And imagine if you can go into this place where you can have clear access, because the thing is, when you're in the energy of the Akashic Records, it's kind of like being in a spiritual plane of it's just clearer. It's higher vibration. What does higher vibration mean? It just means it's not bogged down by heavy emotions or over analyzing or doubt or fear. It's in a place of clarity. It's like higher, like up in the clouds. It feels like that. So there are certain things about the records which hold it very dear to, and there are guides that protect our records. So that is just basically, like my friend Lorinda says, spiritual HIPAA laws, but it's like you can't enter into the Akashic Records and have access to just anyone's information. They are guarded by guides that actually exist in that plane of consciousness, just like we have spirit guides, just like there are archangels, just like there are deities, and just like there are ancestors. It's the same thing. They are guarded, and there's a reason for that. So if you imagine you are in this plane of existence that you can access every single life you've ever lived and all the patterns and things that you want to have knowledge about that possibly either help you thrive or block you. And because it exists in a time and space that has no time and space, it's in a higher plane, you can affect change there for the positive. You can do healing work, you can remove blocks, some people say, can you rewrite history? You can rewrite the patterns so that they don't impact you, and you can transmute just like nothing else I've ever done energetically. So it's a fantastic experience. So, as I said, they are known as a vast energetic library that contains all histories, experiences, and possibilities for every soul. So, why do we call it a library? Well, I believe it's called a library because it stores information. And in here on Earth, we store information in libraries. They're in the form of books, right? Microfiche, things like that, but they're stored there. And so that's why they've always been referred to as a library. Now, when you're going through the process of learning to, what I say is go into the records or attune your energy into the records, a lot of people, when they enter into them, never see a library. A lot of people might even not see anything. Some people might be outside in their imagination, right? So it's different for every person. The main thing is when you're going into the Akashic Records, you want to keep some things in mind. The first thing is you want to keep a very open mind and release expectations. You want to spend some time before you go in attuning your energy to a clearer and higher vibration, to much more of like probably what I would say is like that theta level consciousness through meditation. And people can meditate in different ways by, even by walking, by yoga. I meditate myself, things of that nature. So it makes the active alpha brain that's really busy go into a place of quiet. And also it raises your energy level and your vibration. So it's easier for you when you go into this place. It's kind of like if you imagine, if I like to liken it, my guides tell me this. I like to liken it to going into a place that has, it's like a university. And there are all of the most clear, bright, interesting people in there who can help you gain clarity, who can teach you, help you grow and develop in all the things you're interested in. That's similar to what it's like when you go into the Akashic Records. You're able to tap in and gain knowledge and information. And when you go back into your everyday life, you are forever vibrationally changed. So it's not like you go in once or twice and then you're done. You go in, your vibration is cleared, you get attunements, you go through a healing process often, and then you come back and your energy is at a higher vibration. So, what are some of the things that can really block us from accessing the records? Well, I do like to be clear. There is some important steps that you need to take in order to successfully access the records. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. The next thing is it's very similar to connecting in with your intuition. There is the fear of the unknown, right? You're wondering, what is it? How does it feel? Is it out there? Is it safe? Are there going to be other, spirits that are going to somehow come into my energy? What's it going to be like? So that in of itself, a fear of the unknown, if you're someone who has a lot of, challenges with control, you want to adjust your expectations and work on those beforehand. The next thing is self-doubt. Many people, when they start talking about the Akashic Records, and this is usually when they find me, and this is why I teach, one of the reasons why I teach a class on working in the Akashic Records is because a lot of people have gone into the records, they say, and then not known what they're doing or not know what they're dealing with and realize that they need some training and guidance on understanding the energy. So they go in and they don't know what they're seeing, or they don't know what they're interacting with or how to access it. They're confused and they walk away feeling doubtful, overthinking it. So obviously the logical brain wants to make sense of things. This is very similar to when you do mediumship or psychic work. Your mind starts to try to pick apart, overthink, make sense of things. And instead of just observing, taking it in, allowing it to come to you and saying what you're seeing, sensing, feeling, hearing, and what you're knowing, you try to make sense of it. Your busy mind comes in. Okay. So it's normal to feel unsure when you're first starting. And, but just remember that keeping an open mind and being in a place where you really feel as though you're going to just give it time to learn about it is the best position to take when you come into this work for the Akashic Records. So you want to be curious, right? And notice things like when you enter into this, you're going to be, I wonder what this is. I wonder what that is. Wondering and being curious is a natural part and a very healthy part of any of this type of work, whether it be Akashic Records, accessing your own intuition, psychic work, or mediumships. Being curious is the best place to start. Okay. So here's some very basic guidelines of working in the Akashic Records. Now, admittedly, as I said, I teach this. And I honestly feel like unless you're someone who's pretty experienced to a certain degree with working in meditative states or understanding energy or working with spirit, it might behoove you to take a class because you will have success. You'll be able to validate it. You'll be able to ask questions. You'll be able to integrate what you're learning and get the most out of that experience. So that's why I really recommend my class. So stay tuned for that. So the next thing you want to do is to make sure you're going into a place where you'll be undisturbed for at least 20 minutes to a half an hour. Okay. You want to get into a quiet space, and meditative is best. The next thing you want to do is when you go into the Akashic Records, you need to say an intention or a prayer in order to access your records. So there are important key points to know about the records. So the first thing is, I like to say, in some way, the structure of it is that you are acknowledging the light, right? You're acknowledging this higher place. You're also asking for permission. And if you can access your records. Now, you don't want to say just, can I access my records? You want to say your legal name, and you want to say it in succession. Some people say it 3 times in a row. Some people say it once or twice. And there are different prayers and intentions that are out that you can find. I will leave my own linked to this episode so you can see it. There's also Linda Howe, who has worked in the Akashic Records for many years, and she has something called the Pathway Prayer, which is a beautiful prayer to access the records. Now, I personally don't resonate with that prayer because she speaks in terms of having one God, and I believe more in spirit and universal energy and not one God. So it doesn't resonate for me. But if it resonates for you, feel free. But in that, in every single one, you must say your full legal name at least a few times. And why is that, right? What's the importance of that? The reason is because if you're an expansive consciousness, you're not just this lifetime. You are multiple lifetimes. You're also a spiritual being. So you exist beyond time and space. So if you're really wanting it to relate and understand and be integrated into this life, you have to let source know that you're coming from this body, right? So you can access the relevant records for you. So you want to get centered, right? You want to be in a quiet place. You want to say the prayer, but even before that, you want to set an intention for what you want to receive while you're in the records. Now, this goes back very similarly to when you're tapping into your intuition. You want to be able to have an intention that is open-ended, right? So asking questions that really help to just open up your energy and open up possibilities and open up what you can get. So you're not fixed, you're more expansive. So for example, once you go in, you're centered, you say the prayer, and then you open up the records and just take it from that point, because you don't want to worry, am I seeing anything? Am I talking to anyone? What am I getting? Just observe what you're noticing and just go with it. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But you want to ask questions like, what do I need to know for my spiritual growth in this moment, right? Or what do I need to know for my highest good when it comes to my relationships? Or what do I need to know that's going to help me along my path of developing my intuition? You see what I mean? When you ask these open-ended questions, your subconscious can come forth with insight, but also you're interacting with the records in real time. And you can also make more of an expansive understanding of that to your human self. So it's much better way to approach it and really understand you are connecting with vibrational information. So just by you leaning into that, you're changing your energy in this moment because you're asking for healing, you're asking for clarity, you're asking for insight. Now, in the Akashic Records, you can also check on past lives. So, for example, if you want to know about a past life, and this is what I do in my readings when I do readings for people, I say, what does Susan Blake need to know? Rather, what lifetime does Susan Blake need to know that's going to help her the most in this moment with her growth and healing? What life does Susan Blake need to know in this moment for her growth and healing? So that way you get access to a life that's the most relevant to you right now. And that way you'll be able to understand it. So you're not just observing the past life, right? You're able to interact with it. Healing energy blockages can be removed from that life, which sometimes can affect you today. So it's a really fantastic way. So curating questions is a big part of the Akashic Records. And I do teach that in my class. In fact, in my class, I think I have something like 120 questions that you can ask in the records, which are very helpful and relevant and help give you a lot of insight. Now, what are some of the things that are challenging that might come up for you when you approach going to the records? Well, first of all, some people really wonder if what they see, what they sense, what they get, because it's not their typical day-to-day interaction, whether they're making it up, whether it's their imagination. And so they wonder if they're just hoping and wishing. And here's the truth. Spirit energy, the Akashic Records, works with our images, what is within us. So it will use our own memory, knowledge, and information to give us those images. But there is no part of that where you are conjuring that up. And the best position to take is just to relax and to see what you get, and then write it all down when you're done. And then later you can pick it apart. That's what I always say at first, because you'll start to realize that the more validation you get, the more healing you get, the more insights you get, the more integration into your life that you receive, the more the worry about making it up just goes to the wayside, because you're getting such a huge impact and such a healing in your regular everyday life. So that's a really important part. Another thing is that I believe one of the biggest challenges, people just don't know how to access it. I have so many people that have said to me, and these are sometimes spiritual people, they said, well, I went in, I didn't really know what I was seeing, and then I got confused, and then I felt like I got pushed out. That's so common. That I've heard that so many times. And I say, well, because you need some type of a process that you're taken through, which will guide you through the journey. You know, the Akashic Records is a tool that so many people can take advantage of. And you do not have to be psychic. You do not have to be a medium, because you don't need to see or even feel it. You can just go through the process, have whatever experiences you're having, and you therefore interacting with the powerful energy of that liminal space, which is what holds everything together in the universe. So it's like, remember, the things that put everything together in our consciousness, the things that connect us to people, it is the Akashic Records energy, because it's the fabric of all souls. And so if you imagine you're going into that very heart and of like the essence of everything you've ever done, everything you've ever had, and every memory, it's only going to improve your life. So I would highly recommend saving this episode if you want to come back to it. Check out and make sure that you're following the podcast, and follow me on socials would be beautiful. I'd appreciate it. And please feel free to leave a review, and also look out for my course. I'm going to attach a worksheet to this, which will help you, just some tips and tricks on going to the Akashic Records if you do want to try and go on your own. As always, this episode has been so meaningful and amazing. And again, I'm appreciating those of you that are leaving reviews and comments on my podcast. It helps me tremendously with getting the word out there, and so other people can benefit from this information. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next episode. You've been listening to the Soul to Earth podcast. Follow me on social media and watch the full episodes on YouTube.